Good Tuesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns players with the day off, getting ready for the Chargers, who come into town Sunday for a game. Former NFL quarterback Chris Sims, his thoughts on the Browns' win over the Ravens. This from NBC Sports Pro Football Talk.
It's about damn time that we saw a different quarterback in Cleveland, and I didn't want to see it the way it went down. I certainly wasn't rooting for an injury with Deshaun Watson or anything like that, but this is what needed to be done. This is what we've been calling for really the last 3 to 4 weeks, and it's about damn time we saw Cleveland, with some of the talent they have on their offense, look like an offense and be respectable on that side of the ball. Their defense is an all-star defense. It's one of the best in football, but they can only hold down the fort so long before the dam breaks with the crap offense they've been dealing with. Look at that. I mean, Jameis Winston, first game starting, it's the best the Cleveland offense has looked since Baker Mayfield's been there. I mean, it's plain as pudding. They should have been playing Jameis Winston. He can throw the ball down the field. He's aggressive. He sees the field well. He's a great down-the-field thrower. That's what he is. He gave them an explosive element that they needed.
Well, let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, the offense looked significantly better. Joe Flacco, it looked a lot like the Joe Flacco offense to me. There were some throws where like, ooh, and then there were some throws where like, boy, that's really nice.
Yeah, it's funny because people from the outside, they don't know all the details of everything that has gone on here and is going on here. When you look at this, you really have to look at the fact that they played against the 32nd ranked pass defense, one that was minus 2 of their best cornerbacks in Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins. Now, this isn't to take anything away from Jameis Winston. It was a great start by Jameis. He did a phenomenal job. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. But he also had some things working in his favor that weren't there in previous weeks, including a really good, robust, and healthy offensive line. He didn't have Nick Harris in front of him at center. He didn't have a rookie in Zach Zinter at right guard. He didn't have James Hudson at left tackle. He had the best offensive line the Browns have seen all season long. And then he also had a healthy David Njoku. David hasn't been healthy. He's been coming off of a high ankle sprain. This was probably the first game that I could actually look at Dave and say, that looked like David Njoku to me. He looked healthy in this game. And then Nick Chubb. He had Nick Chubb, who was running the ball really well. So a lot of things that happened in this game were really, really great for the offense. I don't necessarily think it was all because of the quarterback change. There were so many other things that were going on.
So, and again, I know you've been asked this in print, and I know you actually asked Kevin Stefanski that. Do you think the Browns should have turned to Winston earlier, sooner? And if they did, what do you think their record would be?
You know, I don't think they should have because, as I had just mentioned, let's see, if he's on the road in Washington with all the crowd noise and with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen just pressuring up the middle and some good edge rushers as well, with a depleted and injured offensive line and some issues going on at your skill positions, it could be a different story. So I think we just can't take one game and draw a million conclusions from it. I know everybody wants to package this neatly into the anti-Deshaun Watson narrative. I understand that. I get it. I know where the sentiment is coming from. But I still think that I've tried to maintain my objectivity and really look at the big picture. Do I think that Deshaun Watson would have thrown for a whole lot of yards against the Ravens 32nd pass defense? Yes, I do. I really do. With that protection in front of him and with that supporting cast, I think he probably could have done some similar things. We must also remember that Jameis had 3 interceptions dropped in that game, and the Ravens also dropped some touchdown passes and other passes and played probably their worst game of the season overall, and maybe in 3 seasons overall. So I just think we have to temper the enthusiasm a slight bit. I don't think this means they should have gone back and done anything differently before. I think the whole offense was a mess in the beginning, and it's getting better.
So Winston named the starter moving forward by Kevin Stefanski yesterday, certainly against Chargers. Moving forward is kind of how he referred to it. That's not a surprise. I mean, Jameis Winston looked pretty good.
He did look good, and that's what you want from him. He got his opportunity. He had time to throw. The ball was coming out fast. It was on the money. Again, he had 3 interceptions dropped. We might be having a different conversation if some of those interceptions were not dropped, but he did what he was supposed to do. Fortunately for him, the Ravens were not on top of their game in this game, and so he didn't have to answer for 3 interceptions. He gets to answer just for the 3 touchdowns, and that's great. The Browns needed this victory. The receivers needed to be fed. Everybody needed to get happy, and it all worked out really well for everyone.
And these numbers kind of bear out a little bit of, of what you're talking about. Winston against the Ravens when the Browns were trailing, this from PFF, 13 of 17, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 152.5 passer rating. And I say that when you're trailing, defense kind of knows you're going to throw the ball. So those numbers they're impressive.
They are impressive. They're absolutely impressive. And the other thing that happened is players really stepped up big and caught the ball for him too. So that was good. Back some weeks ago, you were dealing with a #1 receiver in Amari Cooper who wasn't really catching the ball for you in the clutch when you needed him to. So when I hear people say, oh, Deshaun couldn't go downfield, well, there were some extenuating circumstances there. A number of times when he did go downfield, the ball wasn't getting caught. It was bouncing off of Amari Cooper's chest, or he was dropping touchdown passes. So it wasn't all that way, but some things just weren't going that well in the first 5 or so games of the season. So I think people need to put this into a little bit of perspective. Jameis had a great game. He really did. The numbers were phenomenal. He operated that offense very, very efficiently. It was beautiful. It was what you wanted to see, and he did a great job with it. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the Browns that they won a football game. And again, for all of those receivers, because things were starting to come unglued in the receiver room. So it's nice to see a victory for everybody, to get the mood lifted. But once again, I think it means that the offense is starting to come together. I think they were trying to run an offense in the beginning of the season that they were not ready for. Maybe they would have been ready for it now with some protection up in front of them, but they were not ready for it back then.
So I know you've written about this as well. What does Sunday's performance tell us about the Browns quarterback situation moving forward for the future?
Well, it's still up in the air in so many ways. It is really up in the air because, first of all, they don't know how and when Deshaun Watson is going to come back from his ruptured Achilles. We don't know yet if they're ready to close the chapter on Deshaun playing football for this team anymore. And if they are, then they have some decisions to make there because, people keep on saying, well, they had to pay him the money anyways. What does it matter if he's playing or not, or here or not? Well, there is an extenuating circumstance there in that if you cut him before June 1st or try to trade him, that's not going to happen before June 1st, then you trigger a $172 million cap charge for 2025, which is untenable. You can't do that. People just want to make it so simple and so easy without understanding the economics of it. If you understand the economics, you know they just can't lop him off and say, well, that didn't work out. We're just going to cut our losses and move on our merry way. They have some decisions to make in that regard. And then in terms of Jameis Winston, let's see how it goes as they move forward. Everyone thought that Joe Flacco was coming back again this year, and that didn't work out. Sometimes things don't work out the way people want them to or the way people think they should. Now, with Joe, of course, nobody thought, I'm sure the Browns realized at some point that they needed a different quarterback in the room with Deshaun Watson, that Joe Flacco probably wasn't going to be conducive to Deshaun Watson being the best version of himself even just from a fan standpoint. That's not the case with Jameis Winston. Jameis can come back here. The fans are going to love him if he continues to win and do well. So he would be someone that you could bring back here next year, maybe start him if you have a rookie. But I think they still have to look very hard in the draft at a quarterback.
All right. This is kind of interesting, too. So this kind of goes with what you're saying about the offense. The Browns converted more third downs, 8 of them, Sunday, than they did in weeks 4 through 6 combined, which was 7. And again, that kind of goes to what you're talking about with, the offense. I mean, Jameis Winston's a part of it, but when you can't convert third downs, you're not going to win football games in the NFL.
No, and you have to look holistically at the offense. Once again, they were getting themselves in a lot of third and longs. It's easy to throw a stat up there like that without looking at the fact that they were in third and long a bunch, because there were a lot of false starts. There were a lot of pre-snap penalties going on, and they found themselves in third and long a ton of times. And also, when the tackle play wasn't very good, it is a little bit more difficult to handle those third downs. I mean, you're gonna get rushed, you're gonna get pressured, you're gonna get thrown, pressured into errant throws. And so there were just so many extenuating circumstances. I really do believe in my heart of hearts that this offense just got off to a horrible start for a bunch of reasons. I mean, look at the fact that David Njoku wasn't even out there for most of those games in the beginning of the season. And Amari Cooper certainly wasn't the Amari Cooper we had ever seen before. And he was dropping passes, he was running errant routes. It was just a complete and total mess. And I know everybody wants to blame all of it on Deshaun. He does deserve some of the blame for missing some open receivers, for running into some sacks, for making bad decisions, but certainly not all of it. And I don't think that this game means that it was all Deshaun's fault. I don't think this is a referendum on that.
All right, before we go to break, couple of concerning areas that came out of the Ravens game. Denzel Ward, 6th concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. That's obviously a concern anytime you're talking about that. And then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, what have you heard about him? He left on a stretcher, was in the hospital. We know he's been released. Is there the thought that he's doing well?
We don't know if he will be well enough to play in this game. Kevin Stefanski wasn't prepared to go there yet, but we do know that he was walking around yesterday, that he has movement in all of his extremities. So we don't know what the diagnosis is. We don't know exactly when he'll be able to play again. But as of right now, we can all just be grateful that he's walking, that he's fine, and that he told us yesterday all is well.
Yeah, and again, we'll continue to monitor Denzel Ward as he's in the concussion protocol. The 6th one, those are always concerning.
Absolutely 100%. And I know that everyone who knows Denzel Ward is well wishing him and praying for him and hoping that he's absolutely 100% fine. I know that his family, his mom, his brother, I'm sure they're very, very concerned about him, and that they are going through the process and talking to all the right people like they always do in a situation like this. And the Browns and the medical staff will never put him back out on the field if they think he's in harm's way. Having said all that, if it were me, I would think long and hard about shutting it down for the rest of the season. The Browns are 2-6. Chances are, even though they still believe they really have a chance to make the playoffs, it's going to be a long, hard road if they're going to be able to do that. And I just don't know if it's worth putting Denzel back out there anytime soon. I would certainly try to sit him down, at least for this game, out of an abundance of caution, and reevaluate everything. Make sure that he's totally fine before he goes out there again. You just don't want a 3rd concussion in the same season.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. During Stefanski's press conference, someone asked him about the draft process or the potential prospects that Andrew Berry might be looking at. And he said he avoids Berry when they're in the building. He doesn't speak to him at all. Was that just tongue-in-cheek? Or did Kevin Stefanski actually spill some behind-the-scenes information? What do you think about that? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, best of my knowledge, they get along really well. Now, it's important to note that both of them report to Jimmy Haslam in ownership. It isn't like Kevin reports to Andrew, who reports to ownership. Both the head coach and the general manager report to ownership, and they get along really well. I wasn't paying that close attention. Kevin must have been saying that tongue in cheek because they talk all the time.
Oh, he was totally kidding. I guess he probably should realize by now that anything that you say in one of those press conferences can maybe be misconstrued or blown out of proportion when it gets in the hands of maybe social media or it goes out there on the internet or something like that. But he was absolutely joking. He made that perfectly clear in the midst of the press conference. They sit next to each other, their offices are next to each other. They're in lockstep. They talk to each other all the time. They work together very closely on absolutely everything. And yeah, Kevin doesn't have much time to be evaluating quarterbacks right now. That part is true, but those guys are constantly in communication, and he was totally kidding.
All right, so Kevin Stefanski was asked yesterday just kind of his thoughts of not calling plays, being the quote-unquote CEO type of coach yesterday.
I think just yesterday I was really pleased with the communication, really the offense, defense, and special teams. I thought the guys did a nice job understanding what we're trying to get done. For me, I was just there to support Dorse in the play calling on the offensive side of the ball, just like I try to do with Coach Schwartz as well. So I thought Dorse did a really nice job getting the plays in. The guys did a nice job getting that out of the huddle. But for me, the decision, I guess, Tony, just is whatever I think is best for the football team is what I'll do.
And again, Mary Kay, people are kind of looking at the play calling, and if you notice, under center, play action, that's the stuff Kevin Stefanski runs all the time.
Yeah, if people don't think Kevin could have called that same game on Sunday, then somehow they must have missed the Joe Flacco 5 starts from last season, because that's exactly what it was. This is the older way of doing things. And I think, if anything, what it shows us is the fact that this offense, for whatever reason, for many reasons, largely the injuries in my mind, was not ready to transition over to the new way of doing things, which included a lot of spread, a lot of RPOs and things like that. I just don't think that it was working. It just did not work. And so, it would have been interesting to see. Who knows? Maybe Ken Dorsey would have been able to pull something else out of Deshaun Watson with that kind of a newfangled offense that they were trying to run to help maximize his abilities. But what we do know is Kevin can certainly run this kind of an offense.
All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
It felt really good to see Kevin Stefanski be the CEO of this team. He was pacing up and down the sideline. He was in all the units. He was all over the place, and it felt really good. I actually had a smile on my face watching him roam the sidelines like a CEO. And Jameis Winston, Mr. Eat W's, is going to lead this team from here on out. Woo-hoo!
All right, again, fan base kind of excited. Mary Kay, I'm kind of, if Kevin Stefanski wants to call plays, he's probably earned the right to call plays. The one thing is they had fewer of there's still some penalties. They had fewer penalties. I don't know if you can credit that to that. I don't know. But, everybody's looking at something.
Well, when you look at a lot of those penalties, you have to remember who was committing some of those penalties, right? When you look back, there were a lot of guys that were committing penalties that were the fill-in guys on the offensive line. So that had a lot to do with it. You had a very veteran offensive line. Just having Wyatt Teller back alone was enormous for this football team. And again, they were dealing with a bad pass defense. So everything was a little bit easier for everybody. Easier to call plays against this defense. Dial up the explosives. Easier for the offensive line to protect for Jameis Winston in this game. Easier for the receivers to get separation in this game. It was just they played a bad football game, the Ravens did. And you have to give them some credit for this victory. The Browns deserve plenty. I'm not going to take anything away from that. Cedric Tillman did a great job. Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David, Jameis, the offensive line, Nick, it all looked very, very good. And they deserve a ton of credit for it. But the Ravens also gave them quite a bit of help.
So the other thing that's kind of interesting is Cedric Tillman is starting to play pretty well. Here's some interesting numbers. 22 quarters played in his career with Deshaun Watson, 12 targets, 6 receptions, 25 yards, no touchdowns. 5 quarters with Winston, 11 targets, 9 receptions, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, I get where they're going with this. As you've pointed out, line was better, protection was better. The one thing, Jameis Winston got rid of the ball quicker. I will say that.
Yes, he did do that. He did do that. And that is something that Deshaun needed to be able to do. But once again, it's easier to get rid of the ball quicker when you look out there and you see someone that is open, or you see someone who is singled up with an inferior quarterback or a cornerback, or a cornerback is playing way off. When you see some things out there, you can let it fly. And even so, 3 times he had interceptions dropped. So I just think that, we just need to look at the whole picture, the whole entire picture. It's easy to pick out those kinds of stats and say, see. Everybody wants to fit it into the absolute anti-Deshaun narrative. And I get it. I understand it. I really do. And Deshaun may never play another down for the Cleveland Browns again. We don't know. It could completely be over here for him. I do understand that. But I don't think that you can easily compare what was going on with this offense in the first 5 games to what has gone on in the last couple games. And remember this, in his last 4 quarters, Deshaun was 26 of 29 for 250 yards, a 102.6 rating, had them in position in Philadelphia for the game-winning touchdown pass when 2 false starts happened, and had them in position to score the game-winning touchdown against the Bengals when he went down with the Achilles. So I just think things need to be kept in perspective.
All right, before we go to break, Nick Chubb has now played 2 games. Have you kind of seen a little bit of progression from the Bengals game to the Ravens game relative to Nick Chubb? Does he look like he's getting his legs under him, so to speak, a little bit more comfortable with what he needs to do?
Yes, he did get his legs underneath him. He really did. And, he will probably play even tougher run defenses than this and more stout defensive fronts than this as they go along. The Pittsburgh Steelers come to mind. So it might not always look exactly like this, but I thought he did make a ton of progress from his first week. I thought he knocked off the rust. I thought he developed a lot of confidence, because that's what you need. I mean, even Jonathan Allen said that about Deshaun Watson after the Commanders game, that he wasn't playing confident, and you're not a good football player if you're not playing with confidence. And I truly believe that. And Nick gained some confidence after that first game and was able to go out there knowing that he could take a hit, that he can convert a 3rd down, that he can score a touchdown. And I think all that was great.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to one of those rare victory Mondays. Seems that without Watson and the welcome Matt Wills on the starting team, our boys played an impressive game. Y'all said a couple of years ago when the Watson trade came through, a good quarterback makes better receivers. Well, it turns out that you were right. Thank you for listening. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. For whatever reason, Mary Kay, the offense did look a little bit more in sync, and we've talked about the line play. And you mentioned wide receivers needed a game like this.
They absolutely did need a game like this. And what I just said before about confidence, everybody needs to play with that kind of confidence. So the receivers gained confidence in that football game. And they're going to gain even more as they go along because, as you mentioned, Jameis does get rid of the ball very quickly. And as long as they can stay on the field and keep converting third downs, everybody's going to get their chances. And that's good. They have more time to get the ball out to the receivers, run more plays. And that was a very, very good confidence booster for all these receivers. And they needed it because that room was starting to lose it a little bit. We were having some issues.
Well, and along those lines, take a look, Jerry Jeudy, and he's another one. 5 catches, 79 yards. So that is his best game to date for the Browns. And that's a guy, when they traded Amari Cooper, they're opening up the slot and saying, become our number one. It's right there for the taking for him.
Yes, absolutely. Both of those guys have stepped up. Everybody has stepped up. Said has really come into his own, and Jerry has these opportunities now. And I really think that these guys are going to finish strong, and they needed some happiness. They really did. I mean, we had Elijah getting benched. We had Jerry Jeudy whipping his helmet into the bench. And it was just kind of going haywire a little bit in that room. And so now you've got some happiness, you've got some joy in there, and hopefully for them, they can keep it going.
All right, so we've kind of touched on it a little bit. Chargers are coming to town. They are currently the 7th placed seed in the AFC at right around 500. Browns are only 2.5 games behind them at 2-6. Are the Browns legitimately still thinking we have a chance to make the playoffs?
Oh, yes, they are. They are still thinking that. And here are 2 reasons why they are still thinking that. 3 teams actually have made the playoffs after starting 2-6, including the 2020 Commanders and the 2022 Jaguars. And then 1 team last year made the playoffs after starting 3-6, and that was the Rams. So we have some recent evidence that you can come from 2-6 or 3-6 and make the playoffs. And these guys now, they believe that they have Jameis in there who's going to help them get there. They know the defense is starting to play better. They see the offensive line is intact. They see David is back and Nick is back. And I think they really do believe that they have a chance to make a run at it, which of course then begs the question, do you trade off a few guys like they were thinking about doing? I don't know. Maybe you give it 1 more week before you let Za'Darius go or some of these other guys go that you might be thinking about trading. So these guys, in their heart of hearts, believe that they absolutely still have a chance.
Yeah, and again, the Chargers are one of the teams. They're going to play most of the teams that are in front of them. The Chargers, the Broncos, all the AFC North teams. The problem is those are some really good teams, and now you really can't slip up.
No, you can't. You don't really have any margin for error. But if they play complementary football like they played in this past game, then they will have a chance. Of course, you really don't want to be without Denzel Ward. That's not going to help matters at all. You don't want to be without JOK. These are 2 of your best defensive players. You don't want to be without those guys. But if they can play good defense the way they have been playing it the past several weeks, and they can keep this offense building upon what they did this past week and in the Bengals game, even to a certain extent, then I think that they have a chance to win a couple of games and keep things interesting for a while. Maybe they're not going to make the playoffs. It's such a long shot. It's an incredible long shot. But if you can keep the players in it for another 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, it's just going to make everything a whole lot easier.
Before I let you go, Browns lost play-by-play man Jim Donovan. Long battle, continuous battle with leukemia. I know you wrote ways to honor him, and we both have known Jim a long time. Take us through the way you think you can honor Jim Donovan.
Well, I think there's a number of things that you can do. I think the Ring of Honor would be a fabulous, fabulous way to go about it. That's one thing that you can do. And then you can name the press box after Jim Donovan. I don't know if the Browns have thought about that yet or not. I haven't talked to anybody over there yet about that, but I think that that would be one phenomenal way to honor Jim Donovan. And I think they should find other ways to do it too. We have to keep the memory of Jim alive. He was too important to this football team, too important to this community. I mean, my goodness, everywhere that I ever go, people are always asking me about Jim Donovan, praying for him, wishing him well, because we spent so many years together sitting next to each other on that Monday night set, talking about the Cleveland Browns and breaking down the game from the night before, which I was so very honored to do. So they can't do too much to honor Jim Donovan, and I know they'll do the right things.
Mary Kay Cabot, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Great Browns coverage, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. We'll continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Is Jameis Winston the answer? No, but it's a lot better than what we were doing. How long was it going to take for our two-time Coach of the Year to recognize that sometimes just moving on and trying something different may be the way to go? He looked totally lost on the sidelines. He didn't have the card in front of his face. But our energy level to win was a lot higher. It definitely looked better than what it has the whole season. Had he done this 3 weeks ago, you never know. We might have still been involved in the race to make the playoffs. But I'm glad you guys at least can see it. And take care, guys. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, Winston may be the short-term answer. I don't know. It looked a lot better than it did with Deshaun Watson. I don't think anybody can argue that.
Oh, that's exactly right. I wrote about that today. I mean, could you get Joe Flacco 2.0? I mean, why not? When they signed him, you know, I felt like Flacco would have been nice to bring back, especially since he wanted to come back. And by the way, he was named the starter today for the Colts. I see over their top pick. But it made sense. But then when you looked at Jameis Winston, you know, you got a very similar prototypical pocket passer, big, strong, been in the league a while, 10 years. But he was 9 years younger than Flacco. And you could argue that he could do just about anything that Flacco could do. You know, he had a propensity to throw a lot of interceptions early in his career. And we saw that the other day that he escaped a couple interceptions. But I think that if you look at later in his career, the last time he started, he was the starter after Drew Brees retired in 2021, and the first 7 games, you know, he suffered a ACL, MCL tear in the 8th game, but in those 7 games, I guess it was the 7th game, his team was 5-2. He had a rating of over 112 or something like that, and he had 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So, you know, he's later in his career. Sometimes these guys settle down and they play better later in their careers than maybe when they're right out of college. So, you know, I don't know if he's the long-term answer, but I've been asking those questions. We've talked about it on here. Not so much even switching to Winston, but why couldn't you do some of the same things you did with Flacco in this offense? When Deshaun Watson was playing. And I think really you're starting to see a little bit. The offensive line, I don't think the switch flipped on, all of a sudden they were great. It's pretty much the same guys. In fact, you put DeJuan Jones over at left tackle, who had been struggling at right tackle. He had to play there because of they were out of options, and he played pretty well. The offensive line looked better. The passing game looked better. The three wide receivers that I had a lot of questions about, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Cedric Tillman, combined for 20 catches for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everything looked better on the offense, and I wrote about it today. The question is, why did it take them so long to make that change? Because basically, now, yeah, technically they could still make the playoffs and make a run. I know Juan Thornhill and some of the players still look at it that way, but they flushed the season down the toilet, in my opinion. I wrote a story about that. It's on the front page of the OBR.com today. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you got to believe your lying eyes, I guess. We saw what we saw, and why, without Deshaun Watson, in the last 6 starts, or last 5 starts, I think the quarterbacks have thrown over 300 yards. If you count the Jeff Driscoll game, without, when he started. But as far as the last 5 games of the regular season, and then the 6th game with the playoff, and then this one with Winston, I think they've had like 7 games without Watson in a row that they've thrown for 300 yards. And so that's kind of, I know it's anecdotal evidence, but boy, how do you explain that?
Yeah, and it looks completely different. Winston's getting the ball out on time. It's early. It just looks different. Week 8 observations, questions, and takeaways. This is from ESPN.com. Can Jameis Winston provide a spark the rest of the season? Winston starting for the injured Deshaun Watson. Browns offense looked like a completely different unit. Reached 20 points for the first time all year. A rhythm and a flow hadn't been present. He did on the verge of giving the ball away a few times, but provided way more good than bad, and led a game-winning drive in his first start since 2022. Describe the game in 2 words: Flacco-esque. Winston's first game as starter, reminiscent of Joe Flacco last season, and an early prediction for next week. Nick Chubb will record his first 100-yard game of the season, a solid second game for Chubb, who provided some tough runs against one of the NFL's best run defenses in the Ravens. Cleveland's offensive line is getting healthier. Chubb could have a breakout game against Chargers. We've already talked about the Flacco. The offense did look on time, in rhythm, and Winston was making quick decisions. You saw the processing wasn't there with Deshaun Watson. He was holding the ball much longer than Winston. You can see it with the naked eye, and then you look at the analytics, and they tell you, yeah, he was getting it out almost a second faster.
Yeah, I mean, Watson just seemed like he was skittish and he was ready to take off and run. When Winston stayed in there just a little longer, but got rid of it quick, made a quick decision and got rid of it. And like I said, he had 2 sacks, and they were both at the end of the first half. The one really was, an unblocked blitz, and Kyle Hamilton. They had played well till then. I think a lot of fans probably, when they saw that, okay, there it goes. The Browns dominated the whole first half, and then that one play put the Ravens on the 25. The defense has done great. You can't fault them there. And, they're behind at halftime. So I don't know. That's another issue, why you're doing that with the lead, taking a chance, especially after you had the false start and it's 3rd and 15. Just run out the clock and go in. You get the ball to start second half. But, when you look at all this, it just seems like there's obviously a reason it looks different. And I watched from Greenbrier the last 2 summers. Watson looked smooth. He looked like he could throw well, everything. He was doing everything in practice, better than Jameis Winston and DTR. But something didn't translate when the game started, whether it's getting hit or whatever, him reverting back to when he used to be able to make plays with his legs scrambling around, that maybe He just couldn't do that anymore. And he was running into sacks and things that the offensive line will tell you when a quarterback stays in the pocket, they know, what to do. Just if you can just keep your guy for a couple seconds and he gets rid of it, makes everybody look a lot better. So that you know, is why I wrote what I wrote. I mean, they watched it every day and continually said that Watson gave him the best chance to win. You have to wonder, what the record would be if they would have made a change earlier.
So, relative to Chubb, he did look like he was feeling a little bit more comfortable. I'm not sure I'm ready to say he's going to get 100 yards against the Chargers, but I think he will take another step forward.
Yeah, I mean, the most impressive was to see that 15-yard run. He was a lot, didn't have a lot of room. Ravens had I think they were number one in the NFL in rushing defense, giving up like 68 yards as a whole. Their downfall has been their passing defense, but I think Chubb had 52 yards. I think it's another step in the progression. I liked the 1-2 punch when Foreman came in. I thought again he was fresh and he was giving him a spark. Had another big run that got called back on a holding call. Jerome Ford should be back this week. So if you can establish and get the running game going, I think it'll only make the play action better. Yeah, the Chargers have a pretty good rushing defense as well. Not as strong as the Ravens, but I think they're about 11th. They have a better rushing defense than the Browns do right now. So I think when you look at all things being equal, Chubb's going to break loose. I'm just happy to see him out there, and he presents a threat the defense has to worry about. They respect him. Sure, he's not the Nick Chubb that we're used to, but if he keeps on going, he's said that he feels comfortable now. He's been hit, and so I think they'll be fine.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break. Should there be renewed hope for the Browns this season? We'll dive into that. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. So the question is, how should folks feel about the Browns moving forward 2-6 on the year?
I have renewed hope after watching that offense. And so many people are making a big deal about Jameis almost throwing the interception. Then he threw the touchdown. Listen, that's football. Almost, woulda, coulda, shoulda. You want to go back through all the games? This guy almost threw it. He didn't. He did what he had to do. He let it rip, which is exactly what I wanted. I think just like Flacco last year, that locker room feels relieved. Just like us. I had friends go, oh, thank God we can root for the Browns.
Riz, it feels like a brand new season.
And Fred, I get it. It looked completely different. This is what I thought the offense would look like with Deshaun Watson, and it didn't. It didn't look anything at all like it.
Well, they kept talking about explosive plays, but the only explosive plays we're seeing was with Joe Flacco last year and with Jameis Winston in his first game. Now, given it was one game, but he had a 38-yard touchdown pass to Tillman to win the game. He had a 30-yard pass to Judy. They weren't getting the ball down the field when Deshaun Watson was in there. He was getting sacked and so forth. So again, the receivers obviously were getting open. Like I said, they had 20 catches. I was concerned when they traded Amari Cooper that they didn't really have any proven receiver because we hadn't seen anything. And now the last 2 weeks, Cedric Tillman, who had 3 catches, I think he's got 19 in the last 2 games, and he's looking like a bona fide receiver, as is Jerry Jeudy, and even Elijah Moore came out of the woodwork. So, and David Njoku. So the passing game looks legitimate now. The offense goes for 401 yards. We haven't seen that since last season. So I realize it's one game. They hadn't even scored 20 points. They got 29. Obviously, Hopkins could have missed the extra point, but they went for 2 because they were trying to get a 7-point lead. So that's why they didn't get to 30 points. So if you can have that type of production, even in the 25-point a game area, I think this defense can still play well enough to help you win games. If you look early, I pointed this out. If the Browns would have just scored 21 points, I think in 3 games, they have 3 more wins. They couldn't score over 18, and that was with help on a safety by the defense. So I think the defense, they have some injuries, but I think they can keep them in games. It's the offense that's let them down up until Sunday.
All right, so this from Dog Pound Daily: 3 winners, 1 loser from the Browns' Week 8 win. The winners: Jameis Winston, we've talked about that. 3 touchdowns, 334 yards passing, 115.3 quarterback ranking, and they kind of rallied around him. The offense did. Cedric Tillman, number 2, finished up Week 8 with the team's leading receiver, picking up 100 yards, 2 touchdowns in the win. In Week 7, showed signs of life, 81 receiving yards on 12 targets. And number 3, Mohamed Diabate, as he recorded 2 sacks on the day in addition to 4 tackles, 5 assists. And he's been a force on the edge with Okunranko and Owusu-Koramoah, who's banged up as well. They say the loser was Wyatt Teller. Perhaps the only demerit of the afternoon, Week 8. Teller get 3 of the 7 total penalties called against him. Some crucial moments. Teller killed drives, ended up being a touchdown, being a Tillman game-winning touchdown with a holding penalty. You know what, Fred? I think the offensive line missed. I'll start with Teller. I think they were more physical, and I think Wyatt Teller's the reason they were more physical. So did he have penalties that were costly? Yep. He hadn't played in 4 weeks. He was on IR. But they're better. They are a better offensive line with him in there, without question.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Michael Dunn hadn't really been as effective as he was in the past. He was filling in when Teller was out and the other injuries. And so, I mean, across the board, this was your projected offensive line minus the left tackle for the first time. You had Conklin at right tackle, Teller back at right guard, Ethan Posick at center, Joe Bitonio at left guard, and you didn't have Jedrick Wills. You threw DeJuan Jones out there, and he had a false start, but other than that, you didn't really see him, being a cause of concern. So I think, again, the coach quickly went to the protection, but I think the protection did look a little better because the quarterback got rid of the ball. Other than that one blitz, he got sacked and it was a fumble. It was pretty effective. But Teller, the guys talk about, he brings a physical presence in there. And sure, you hate to see the calls. That one holding call was a little on the borderline anyway, but I get the point. I think he'll be better this week. Not too many guys come off the injury reserve and immediately start. A lot of times they practice a week or so before they're ready, but he stepped right in because they needed him to. So I think if you can get some consistency on that line, playing with Winston, I think there's optimism that the offense can continue to click.
Diabate was one that he certainly flashed, and they're probably going to need him. We don't know about Jordan Hicks now. Owusu-Koramoah, you never know if he's going to be able to go. So they're going to need another big game from Diabate.
Yeah, I mean that's a pleasant surprise. Here's an undrafted free agent who, really has almost been like JOK light or JOK 2.0. And if you can get that from an undrafted free agent, that really bodes well for you. Another one I'll point out is Winston Reed. Winston Reed was an undrafted linebacker from Weber State. He was cut, but they put him on the practice squad, and he's worked his way up now where he's a core special team player, and he's actually got in when JOK went down, and he also was making plays. Very physical player. Tony Fields has not been able to return since his injury. And yeah, we don't know the status of Hicks or JOK. I would think Hicks would have a better chance to return this week. He was questionable last week, throughout the week, but then was rolled out. JOK, it's good that he got released from the hospital, and Stefanski didn't roll him out for this week. They do have a bye after this game, so I think if anything is close, they would probably err with caution and hold him out if he's still got any side effects. Hopefully Hicks could be back, but as you said, you're going to need the young guys to step up. It was encouraging, the game that we saw at a Diabete for sure.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, hope you're doing well today. This is Tim from Cleveland. I just had a couple thoughts. I really don't think Haslam is as much to blame as I previously thought. I think this is a Barry and DePodesta decision with Deshaun Watson and all of the bad things that have come with it, more so than Haslam, although he certainly signed off on it. I also think that I am very apathetic this year. I've given up on the year, and I don't even know if I'll be interested in football next year. Basically, what they've managed to do is kill my love for the Browns, slowly but surely over the years. And I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks for the show. Appreciate everything you do. Take care.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Fred, we're never going to know whose decision Deshaun Watson is. I don't think even after the fact. And that the trade, I don't really have a problem with the trade. The contract is and that's going to be what the major sticking point is that guaranteed contract. That's what they're going to have a tough time getting around, and that's it's been described as a meteor in the salary cap.
Well, there's no question, that that's a lot of money. But we do have a guy, you probably had him on the show, Jack Duffin, who really, has talked about it the way that if Jimmy Haslam continues to be willing to spend up cash bonus, by converting and restructuring these contracts and spending the cash up front, it's manageable. Sure, it's a big chunk, but they'll do the same thing whether he's playing or he's not playing, whether he's backup quarterback or inactive the whole season for the next 2 years. Yes, it is going to be, a good chunk of the budget, but the way they do things, they haven't been restricted in free agency or bringing in players. What they miss is 3 first-round players that hopefully would be starters in this team right now. But even working around the Deshaun Watson situation, I think Andrew Berry has been able to do a pretty good job putting together the roster. I felt it's like the best roster I had covered in the 30 years. A lot of the glaring one is going, and getting Deshaun Watson that not working. And I think that's why they've tried so hard to make sure it works. And my question is, and why I wrote about that is why sabotage the season. I don't think they really intended. I really think they felt like Watson would work his way out of it. I said in there, if he wouldn't have got hurt, I bet you he would have started once again against the Ravens. I don't know if they would have made a change until they were forced to, which is kind of unfortunate. But as far as, I don't think they're going to be limited. I think they'll be able to be okay all the way around, because it really doesn't matter if Watson's on the field or he's not on the field. You're still paying the same amount of money. The biggest thing is production from the quarterback position. And are you going to be able to continue to win with Jameis Winston or DTR, or with a draft pick that you get next year? So that's the biggest thing. They have to get it right, whoever it is at quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree. And you know what? You mentioned the draft, and I don't want to get sidetracked on it, but you probably need a left tackle, you probably need a number one receiver, and you probably need a quarterback. So you need a lot, cornerstone-wise, for the offense. This is interesting as well. Jameis Winston, this is from PFF. This is throws past the sticks against the Ravens, and this will show you another thing of what. So it's past the first down marker downfield, 14 to 21, 255, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the other thing is he becomes the first Browns quarterback to finish with 300-plus passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions since Week 11 of 2022, Jacoby Brissett. Now, Flacco had the 300-yard things, but he didn't have 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So, again, when you get good quarterback play, you win in the NFL.
You're old enough like I am to remember quarterbacks. One comes to mind, Rich Gannon. He was a high draft pick, but he was just a journeyman. And then he caught fire. I think he was an MVP for the Raiders late in his career. Sometimes these guys figure it out later on. There was a reason Jameis Winston was the number 1 pick in the draft in 2019. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the arm, he's got everything, but he throws so many interceptions early in his career. I think that he still has a propensity to do that because he likes to take shots and go downfield, but I think he'll take that with the trade-off of having an explosive offense. But now he's 30, and like I said, the last year he started, he had pretty good stats until he got sidelined for the season. And so you hope the combination of his talent with now his 10 years experience and settling down, maybe he could be your bridge quarterback for another season, and you can continue to look at DTR, or you can position yourself to make a move for, again, a longer term answer. But again, at 30 years old, he could be your quarterback for 5-6 years. I mean, Kirk Cousins, 37, 38, isn't he? We know Aaron Rodgers still going in his 40s. And, that's kind of the way it goes now. That's what they anticipated Deshaun Watson to be. He's only a year older than Deshaun Watson, So I'm not saying he's the answer, but I'm intrigued to see more of this.
Yeah, I'm with you, and we will see that coming up. So Browns are 2-6, currently 2.5. I can't believe I'm saying this. They're 2-6, and they're only 2.5 games behind the 7th place team in the AFC, which is the final playoff spot. That's the Chargers, who come to town on Sunday. The Browns players, Juan Thornhill, a couple of them that we heard from yesterday, are talking. They still think they can make the playoffs. Realistic, and then the other thing is, what do you want to see from the Browns against the Chargers? What do they need to do? Obviously, you get a win against the Chargers. Now you got the tiebreaker against them. What do they need to do against the Chargers to get the win? And I guess the players should be thinking playoffs, I guess.
Well, you don't want the season to be over. He even said when they were 1-6, they didn't feel. And what he's talking about, I mean, yeah, it seems ridiculous at 1-6 or 2-6 to even be using the word playoff, but he went there. What he's talking about, they lost all 4 games against the AFC East, and all the tiebreakers and all those things are in the AFC. You're 2-2 in the AFC. You lost the Bengals and you lost to the Raiders. But yeah, as crazy as it is, I always go back. You get to the Thanksgiving or a little later, they'll put up on the TV In the Hunt, and it's almost ridiculous. You'll see In the Hunt 4-7 or 5-8 or something like that. And you're like, In the Hunt. But that's how the NFL is. With 7 teams that make it, you can actually be 500 or less and still be kind of battling. Now, it's going to take, yeoman's effort. It's almost like every week's a must win. But that's why I think this Chargers game is such a big game, because you go into the bye 3-6, you lose your 2-7, then maybe your mindset is, okay, let's play younger guys and move on and see what we have for next year with DTR or whatever. You win, as long as you stay within a couple games, you got 4 more games in the AFC North, so you get a chance to knock down a lot of those teams in front of you. So yeah, they have the talent. I mean, if they played like they did Sunday, like I said, I think they could. I mean, Baltimore was the top team right there with the Chiefs in the AFC. So as far as to win, I think they have to control the ball. You need to get more out of your running game. I think if Nick Chubb could get 100 yards, or combined with Dante Foreman and Jerome Ford to get 100 yards, I think it would open up the play action pass more. I don't think you need to rely on Jameis Winston for throwing for 300 yards every week. But if you can have that balance, I think that, Justin Herbert, he's a big weapon quarterback as well. So I just think that the Browns want to keep him off the field, let the defense get some rest, and if they can keep him under control, I think that they could be able to outscore him. I mean, again, if the defense does their job, last week they gave up 24 points. 7 of them were a gift. We know that. So legitimately, the Ravens scored 17, and 2 of them, or most of their points, were late in the game. So I just think the Browns play to their ability on defense, and then get a little more consistency with the offense, keep it going, balance, passing, running. They could come out with another win this week.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Thanks, Dave. Great day.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, always really good stuff. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.